And introduce our next panel, which is moving away from natural gas. I'm going to start it off with Jeff Terrell.
Thank you, Lucy. All right, I'll give people a moment to settle back down and get their muffins and everything else. So thank you for coming today. This is a great turnout, first day of December. I'm Jeff Terrell. I'm the Renewable Heating and Cooling Manager for CASR, and we'll be talking about the Building Electrification Program. And joining me is Andrea Salazar from Michael's Energy, Pastor Scott Carranza from Grace and Life Church, Kathleen Cronin from Earthlinks, and last but not least, Celeste Sizik from Group 14. And away we go. So I think some of the reasons, like we did give the why are we looking at building electrification and what are we headed towards in our future. So why building electrification in Denver? And it's fairly easy to see that 64% of our greenhouse gases come from the commercial and multifamily sector. And these are the buildings that they emit the most. They have the largest impact on our greenhouse gases. And these are the places where we live, we work, and they are of importance to us. And these are also the buildings that when we look at them, it's the space and the hot water heating. A lot of people talk about cooking and other appliances, but the bulk of the energy use comes from space and water heating. So when we look at these, we also know that our grid is getting cleaner. We know that we will reduce, the grid will move to 100% renewable power, and that the methane that we're burning is 80 times more impactful for climate change than carbon emissions. So we have a clear and direct goal is to reduce the impacts of burning fossil fuels. We also look at safety and health and safety of people inside of buildings. And we know that 30% of low-income homes in Denver today have gas equipment that fails carbon monoxide tests. This is important that we look at these low-income, at-risk, and under-resourced buildings as a place where we want to have healthy homes also. So what are we doing about that? We have actually looked at electrification requirements, and these requirements are really about at the time of replacement for equipment, and much like what Sharon and her panel talked about, they phase in over time. And in March 1st of 2023, you'll hear me talk about March 1st, 2023 a few times today, the permit processing changes, and it changes for the gas systems and AC units that are for all building types. And this is all the commercial and multifamily buildings, not just those over 25,000 square feet. And it is for the hot water, tank type hot water heaters, rooftop furnaces, AC units, and indoor forced air furnaces. And then over time in 2025, we were looking to replace furnaces, and rooftop units will be required upon replacement. And that is a shift that we're preparing for in 2023 and 2024. And lastly, in 2027, the heat pumps will be required for what we sometimes refer to as our harder to electrify systems, PTACs, boilers, buildings like this on steam, and central hot water systems. And again, these are when it's cost effective and when it's achievable. And so the panel, we will talk about what that means today. What is achievable? What is feasible? So as I talked about, the first deadline coming towards us is March 1st of 2023. And when you're replacing these systems, these unitary AC systems or condensing units, your hot water heater, your natural gas furnace, upon that replacement, we will actually be changing the code requirements, the permitting requirements change. So the first thing you'll see is the quick permits are going away. Those are no longer going to be available. There will be ability for the replacement of emergency replacement. But again, that is something that is for emergencies only. This is not, for if you're trying to put your AC unit in January, it's not an emergency. We know that, but we will be monitoring those and working with building owners and contractors with community planning and development. And then we will also changing how the permitting goes through. And I'm going to encourage all of you to start this. If there's one takeaway, it's to start planning earlier for your equipment replacement, no matter what your building size is, and to start thinking about how to electrify. And Andrea will be talking more about that, and Celeste will be talking about that at the end, some of the equipment options, and to really make sure that you're thinking of all the options that are out there. And it's in 2023, it is still allowed to put in gas-fired and regular AC units that are non-heat pump, non-electrified, but the code requirements do change. So I would encourage you to check out community planning and developments requirements as we get closer to 2023 to that March deadline, and really understand what are the requirements for the right sizing, gas line leak testing, and for the emissions requirements and safety standards. So as part of this, we're setting up an entire program. We know that building owners, especially those at the most at risk, are not able to just say, I see your code, I can afford to go do this, it's easy. These things will take some changes. So the first one we're setting up is feasibility reports. These are one of the compliance pathways for if you're going to put in gas systems. This allows you to actually realize, can I do electrification? Can I do partial electrification in my building? What systems are able to be electrified at a reasonable cost for my building? And our hope is that this is something that's educational for contractors, building owners, and for ourselves to find the pathways to electrify buildings. And then again, push that back out to all of you through our website and through presentations like this. Our goal is to get about 1,200 of those through a year. Ideally, these are buildings that are, early adopters that are trying to figure out how do I electrify? And if they cannot, we're still allowing for natural gas replacements. And to that end, we're trying to set up pilots right now. And both Pastor Scott and Kathleen will talk about the pilots at their sites. And this is very much a learning by doing. Denver's at the forefront of electrification, building performance standards, and a lot of things around climate action. So we need to learn by doing and understand, how do we do this best? How do we actually stand up programs that are not just a prescriptive rebate that pays you for a per ton of reduction of emissions or a standard rebate? Because we know that there are important things that are beyond just the, here's how much it costs. What about the feasibility of it? What options are there available for you? How do you work with an engineering firm to actually understand what's available? And how do you get through the permitting? All of that needs to be figured out through our pilot programs. And that will be then turned into our incentives through those lessons learned through pilots. And I know that we're going to have to set up some really good, clear navigation and facilitation processes for building owners, for all building owners like yourselves and your consultants, to actually understand this change and to move forward. And to that end, we have contracted with Michael's Energy and some of their partners and other contractors, because we're at the forefront of this. We certainly can't do this alone. We can't do this by just hiring staff in and trying to figure out, we need some outside brains and muscle to come in and help us. And so we see Andrea and her team as partners in this and thought leaders in this area. And I will hand it over to her. And again, we will also be taking questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everyone. Hi, Andrea Salazar with Michael's Energy. Let me advance the slide. Okay, so just to introduce who we are, apparently we're the brains and muscle behind this. So I am head of brains and muscle with Michael's Energy. We're based in Wisconsin, been around for over 35 years, an engineering firm historically. We both design and implement or administer programs for cities, utilities, nonprofits, et cetera, and electrification programs. And then we also do research and evaluation for those same types of firms. So if they want to know what the market, the status of the market is for heat pumps, or what the costs of heat pumps are in the market. These are our partners, and I want you to know their names because we are referring to ourselves, not as Denver. So you will hear us. We will call you. Michaels will call you. CEE will call you. You'll see these people around. So CEE stands for Center for Energy and Environment, based in Minnesota, as with most companies' offices everywhere now. They have also been in the same industry. They are our partner on designing the programs and implementing them for the city of Denver. They are known to be in the industry. I don't know if any of you know them, but they are at the forefront of knowledge and research around heat pumps, especially cold climate heat pumps. And I don't know if you know, but we live in a cold climate as per yesterday and the day before. Today, not so much, but so they are our partners, and we use their electrification brain trust to help us navigate this. And then the two other firms, perhaps you've seen their logos, they are local firms. Zozo is a marketing and public relations firm, so they are our marketing arm. Lashita Sayer is the head of that firm. She also is the owner of, I believe, the first Black-owned grocery store in 5 Points called Melody Market, so go check it out. And then BCS is a bilingual communication service headed up by Ana Mostachero, and so she is our interpretation and translation firm. So you will be seeing us around. Okay, gonna talk exciting. I promise I'll address what you're seeing. So this is the Electrification Feasibility Report. This is in beta form. You guys are going to forgive us. You guys are going to work with us. We're learning by doing. So you're going to tell us what doesn't work about this for you. But this is our first attempt. What the Electrification Feasibility Report is intended to do is to address the feasibility, the practicality, the cost effectiveness of pursuing electrification, electric equipment over gas equipment for a replacement, right? What this is not intended to do is be an ASHRAE level 2 audit. Okay, this is not intended to be energy modeling. This is not a very extremely robust tool. What it is supposed to be is, okay, let's look at some basic inputs. Let's do some basic calculations and see, does it even make sense for me to get a bid on electrification? Does that make sense? So what you're seeing here is just a portion of the input field. So who can fill this out? Contractors. So HVAC, plumbers, all kinds of contractors, engineers, consultants. Many of you in the room may be interested in filling this out on behalf of your customers. And then dedicated facility managers who have the capacity to do this. What we're looking at here, you can see there's some basic inputs. Some of the basic things we ask at the beginning: is there equipment of the proper size and capacity that can replace what you're trying to replace? If not, might be an out for you, or we might talk partial electrification, right? Can it fit in the physical space, right? Is the electric service sufficient, or do you need an upgrade? Does the duct work with what you're proposing, or would there be redesign? None of those are a hard no that you can't do it, right? We want to do what Jeff said, facilitation. See, these are some of the sticky issues, right? So we're going to be doing some facilitation to try and help solve those problems. Those are some of the things. We also then have the person filling this out collect the utility rate and then costs for the gas and the electric options. And then we run some calculations, and I'll show you what happens on the next slide. Sorry, my two things at the bottom here, newdaynewcode.com. I think we'll be posting these slides. If not, I'll be pushing these out. Yes. So that's where you can see everything about electrification feasibility reports. And then there's also a link to the current report template that you can download and play around with if you're a dork like me. So this is what it's going to spit out, and not so pretty. Okay, we'll work on it. Thank you for your patience while I make this prettier. So what it's going to spit out is this basic stuff, right? So we're going to look at, okay, sorry, let me explain this. This is for a dual fuel, as it says at the top, heat pump rooftop unit. And what you're seeing in the left, if I was you, hand column is the gas system. So that would just be a gas rooftop unit, okay? On the electric system, the electric is the dual fuel heat pump system. Those are the two options that we're comparing. So what you normally would replace it with, if you were just doing like for like, and your heat pump option, okay? And we're looking at, so what's the total energy consumption? What's the total emissions? What are the first costs? We're looking at net present costs. And then in this box down here, these might be some of your selling points, right? And what this is intended to be is a conversation piece between whoever is filling this out and the building owner. Does this make sense for your building? Sometimes the answer might be no, but sometimes the answer is going to be yes, because there's going to be incentives. So you can see there's a change, 60% decrease in energy consumption. That's great, right? This might help you meet your EOI. Total, our forecasted annual operating cost difference is only 17%. Why? Because electricity is more expensive than gas right now. Yeah. We may see cases where it's more expensive. Again, there are incentives. And these are things we're going to figure out. We're going to see carbon savings. And then we have this parity, passing the cost parity test. This one did. That's going to be when Jeff talked about when it's required, if it's cost effective, the cost parity test is what we're going to use to determine if it's cost effective. I'm going to tee myself up, as I've been doing, for my next slide. You see that trainings thing down there? You want to learn how to fill this out and use this? There's a link. There are 5 trainings coming up starting in January. I would love to see a flood of they come directly to my inbox. It would bring me no more joy than even Christmas to see lots of signups. So go ahead and sign up, or tell your consultants to sign up. With that, I totally set myself up for this slide. Check it out. So we're going to have trainings, and we started this week. What this is, these are images of the flyer. I couldn't find it in my mailbox, but I think that's because I had too much junk in there. These flyers went out to HVAC and plumbing contractors. So these are the different foldouts of the flyer. If you didn't get one, that's probably because you're not a HVAC or plumbing contractor. Don't feel left out. Guess what? We still have a whole campaign going. We're going to be on Facebook. We're going to be everywhere. You're going to hear about this. You're going to see this. You might get an email about it. Okay. So tagline for us is new day, new code. So what are you going to learn about in this training? You're going to learn about the code changes in more depth. You're going to learn about more depth what's happening with the permitting process, how that's going to change, how it might change your permit costs and your permit wait time, right? You're going to learn about Jeff referred to, this is the Energy Feasibility Report is one of several options for compliance. You're going to learn about all the options for compliance, the benefits, drawbacks, and costs for each, so that you can determine which one would you want to use in different scenarios. Then maybe pretty obviously, you're going to learn about how to fill out the EFR. EFR. That's what we call it lovingly, because Electrification Feasibility Report is a mouthful. So you're going to learn how to fill it out. But not only am I going to show it to you and say, look, here's the input fields. We're going to test you, because what we've found, we've trained 3 contractors already on this. And when we show it to people, they're like, yeah, cool. That seems simple. And guess what happens? You go to a building and then you have questions, because that nameplate on that old RTU, it's worn off. I have no idea. What do I do? That's when the questions come in. So we're going to have people split into groups, and we're going to give you a scenario building. And hopefully then we're going to work through what are some of the issues that you're going to face in the field. So that's the training. They start in late January. We have them through March, and then we have one that we are saving to talk about boilers and those harder systems in August, probably focused on more like design engineers is what we're thinking. Who's going to attend that? Love for you to train up. Again, it would be like Christmas in my inbox. So next slide. To test these feasibility reports and to figure out how to stand up incentive programs, we're running pilots. We're running them now. These guys are in it. It's great. We got 6 buildings. We're looking for 70. This is not on my slides, so don't look for it anywhere. Just listen to me. In case you weren't. So what the pilot includes, okay, we cover the cost of the electrification feasibility report, period. Denver pays the contractor. Then we cover at least the difference between the cost of what the gas system would have been and the electric system. So you're not paying any more out of pocket than you would have, okay? We can pay up to 100% of the project costs. That includes things like commissioning. Do you need an electrical upgrade? Do you need duct rework? Do you need design work? Okay, that includes the whole project. These are determined on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so that's, and then as Jeff mentioned, we're doing a lot of facilitation and navigation. We are holding your hand through this whole process. And by the way, because we're trying to take lessons learned and take those and then roll those into programs that work for the market, we're going to ask you a lot of questions. We're going to ask you for feedback, and we're going to want you to be honest with us, right? And we're going to ask your contractors for a lot of feedback. So we are looking for, you know, we got 6, we need 70, still need a lot more. Sign up. I have a little link to the form. We're looking for specific building types. We're looking for specific system types so that we can learn about all the different things we're going to encounter in Denver and then roll out programs. There's going to be a program starting in March of 2023, which we're going to talk about. There's going to be an incentive program just for the electrification feasibility reports. And then also a program starting, probably rolling it out based on equipment type as we learn about different equipment types and what the costs are, what the challenges are, et cetera. I imagine most likely we're going to roll out one for heat pump water heaters first. And there will be incentives just for the equipment. And the reason we're splitting those two is because in the pilot, you got to do both, okay? But if you decide to heck with it, I think electrification is the way to go for me. It's going to reduce my EUI. I already know I want to do it. We're not going to make you do this. We're not going to make you do the feasibility report. You can just go ahead and electrify. That's great. Okay, so that's why it'll be 2 separate programs. I want to give you a little preview, the Dork preview. This is the Dorky preview of the next 2 speakers. So why are we doing all of this? We're doing it for buildings, right? Guess who is in buildings? People. People growing, people living, people crying, people laughing, right? People working. And that's actually what's motivating us is the people. And you're going to hear from the people and what's actually happening in those buildings in a minute here. So here's the Dork version of these buildings. And then I'll let these guys give you the human side. So on your left, we've got Earthlinks. That's Kathleen. We went on site, and by we, I mean, what I mean is we, Michael's Energy, went on site, but we are not doing these electrification feasibility reports. We partnered with 3 firms. We already taught them how to do the electrification feasibility report. So other people are doing this. Denver's not doing this. Michael's Energy is not doing this, right? So Solutions Mechanical went with us on site. What they've got there at Earthlinks is they have a rooftop unit that has long since stopped providing cooling. It's starting to fail. They have a swamp cooler that kind of keeps it sort of comfortable in the summer, right? That's what they've got. What the tentative recommendation is, hot off the press, still waiting for finalization, is going to be a dual fuel rooftop unit with gas backup heat. That's going to be the recommendation for Kathleen that we'll be talking about later, Kathleen. And for Scott, so this is Life and Grace Church, the other picture. There were, I think, in the roof looking at the air handling system with Abraxas Energy. And so they've got, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, I think they've got 4 rooftop units. They've got 4 smaller gas furnaces that are paired with a split AC system. And then they've got, or at least had, there's a story there, 4 water heaters. Okay. The tentative solution there is going to be rooftop unit, heat pump rooftop units, possibly with electric backup for the rooftop units. For the gas fired furnaces, retrofitting those to be heat pumps and using the same ductwork and the same air handling unit is going to be the recommendation. Tentatively, again, Scott, this is the first time he's hearing this. And then for the water heaters, heat pump water heaters. So that's the Dork version of it. But I want these guys to tell you what happens in those buildings and what their needs were and what their challenges were, because I think that's a much more compelling story than anything I have to tell you. So happy to answer questions afterwards. And I want to introduce Scott.
Well, good morning, Denver. I hope you're all well. I'm happy to be part of the pilot program. Like Andrea said, my name is Pastor Scott Carranza, or Pastor Scott Carranza, depending on what circle I'm at. I pastor Grace and Life Church. It's a Spanish church, Iglesia Gracia y Vida. I've been there for 20 years, and we're located in the Denver Westwood neighborhood, which is one of the 3 lowest income neighborhoods of Denver. So an urban setting. We have a lot of programs at our church. Of course, we do religious services, but besides that, we have a lot of community outreach. We've done, this is just a sampling, some Thanksgiving meals where we fed over 300 people. Summer celebrations, we call them summer fiestas, where they're basically just public events in our parking lot. We've done a youth job fair. We do our Academia Mauricio Saravia, which is our after school program for kids that are ages 5 to 11, and we teach them art classes, music classes, whatever we can find a teacher to teach. We teach those classes. We give them a meal as well and help them with their homework. And we have currently going on a class called Youth Influencers, where we're teaching them how to use social media to speak out against violence in a positive way. We partner with people. So we've partnered with Jewish Family Services, and they bring a food truck into our parking lot to serve our neighborhood twice a month, every couple of weeks. In the past, we partnered with University of Colorado Denver with teachers or their college professors that come out and run STEM camps for the kids. Lakewood Rotary, Inglewood Rotary have partnered with us doing basketball camps and a digital reading program. So we are quite busy in our little corner of the world. Just a little history on our building. It was built in 1946 as a skating rink. If you go into our neighborhood, it's the only building with a round roof. So it's easy to find. It was also, I guess, a VFW dance hall. I find out this information about the dance hall from some of the older neighbors. They still remember these things. In 1958, it became a multi-unit dwelling building. It started with 5, I think then expanded to 7 or 9. In 1971, they began to do various businesses out of the garage. And I began to notice in the history that they're start to get cited for zoning violations from Denver. And when the church purchased the building in 1992, it was basically a condemned vacant building where it was just being used for drug use or whatever, graffiti. And so it began a remodel process. It's been refit and redesigned and re-envisioned multiple times. So it doesn't work perfectly for anything right now, but we're trying to make the best of it. So it was built, purchased in 1992, and in 1993, the church began its services there. I came in 2002, So I've been there 20 years. And currently, besides doing all of our community work, our religious services, we have one functioning apartment that's in the building, and we're remodeling a second apartment building that we hope to get rented starting in January. We have lots of struggles and project needs in our building. An example is in 2020, we had a flood. One of our water heaters burst. And so I went into the building. It was a regular day. I was very happy. And then I discovered that we had a tropical rainstorm in the middle of our building. It was just pouring water in both bathrooms. It became a $50,000 remodel job. Luckily, we have insurance, but our insurance, we have a $7,500 deductible so that we can afford the premiums. Again, we're a low-income neighborhood. We are a lower-income church ministering basically to the immigrant community. If we hit $1,000 in an offering on a Sunday, I should buy a lottery ticket, but I can't since I'm a pastor, so I can't do those things. But anyways, so we don't have money. They asked, what's our budget to take care of some of the extra costs? I said, budget? I don't know that word. We live by faith. We go from Sunday to Sunday. We have no budget for anything. I have to raise money is what I have to do in order to pay the bills at the church. You can't even pay the bills with our income that we have from our offerings. So I have to raise money to pay the bills and try to pay myself as well. So we had this flood. We fixed it, but because of the $7,500 deductible, we still have not to this day yet fixed the showers that we have in our bathrooms. We're working on it now, but it takes years for us to accumulate the funds to do these needs. Our roof has been replaced 3 times since I've been there. And the second time they replaced it, they had to strip all the shingles back. And we discovered that there was no insulation in the rafters. So we need insulation in our rafters as well. Multiple broken HVAC units happens all the time. Right now, we don't have 2 of them that work on our rooftop. And so we're using space heaters in one of the areas where the kids meet. So yeah, we have some needs. So my desired outcomes, I would love to learn how to manage our energy more efficiently. I wear a dozen hats at the church. I'm the only full-time employee there. Excuse me. So I have to figure out how to take care of the building. I just now discovered after 20 years, I'm a quick learner, by the way, that I can reduce our energy costs by not having everything programmed at the same time. And I programmed everything on my 8 thermostats at the same time just to make it easier for me to remember the program. But because of that, I get these demand charges, which raise our bill through the roof. And I just now figured that out after 20 years, that if I can stagger the programming, I can lower our bill. And I can also get us onto a different energy plan at Excel. So I just learned that now. I should pat myself on the back for that one. And then also, I hope to lower our energy bill. So we will see. We're a pilot program, and we're looking forward to our partnership with these fine people up here. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Cronin. Also Vanna White today. I'm going to show you some show and tell. Thank you. I'm from Earthlinks. Earthlinks is a nonprofit. We're located in Sun Valley, so we're almost neighbors to Westwood. So we're right at the corner of 13th and Decatur. It's a bustling spot right now of construction. So if you can get to us, please come by. We work with adults experiencing homelessness. We have 2 parts to our mission. One is to care for the planet while we care for each other. We've been around for 26 years. We have about a 70% success rate on getting people housed once they're in our program for more than 6 months and keeping them housed. And the way we do that is because we do case management without anybody knowing that's what we're doing. So folks that come to us work in our gardens. We do grow all year. We have a hoop house on site, and we raise bees. We have composting worms. We can make you a rain barrel. Our products that we sell from our social enterprise, which, by the way, about breaks even. I'm hoping you're going to help me with that today, but anyway, about breaks even. And those products are all with sustainability in mind. So our lip balms are made without plastic, compostable containers. Our honey is from our hives in glass that can be recycled. Everything that we do, we try to consider earth as what we're doing while we're doing it. The people come in, they work in our craft workshop, they work in our gardens, maybe they take care of the worms, something that's going to make them feel good about themselves so that they can move forward and stabilize in their lives. Most of our folks will never return to work, but we do have a small work option for people in our little coffee shop. And that's for folks that are otherwise have barriers to employment that may be able to move on to employment. That's kind of what we do, and we are open. We do have a big sale coming up in a week. I have some flyers in the back and I have some samples of our products, so please stop by after this event, but Jeff might hit me if I keep talking much more. So our site is about 0.6 of an acre. It's one of the few green spaces remaining in Sun Valley. Sun Valley has long been an ignored neighborhood in Denver. It's under a huge redevelopment process managed by Denver Housing Authority right now. And pretty much everything's going to be apartment buildings in the neighborhood. And at the present time, our garden is about it for green space in the neighborhood. We do open it up for the neighbors to come and visit, but the garden itself is managed by our community. So it's our community's garden. It's not a regular community garden. We have about 6,500 square feet in production in the garden right now. And we have 4 buildings on site. So we purchased this property also really by faith, quite frankly, and a loan or two. But nonetheless, we purchased it in 2013. And the reason we got this property was because the beer people and the marijuana people did not want it. So, but we have on site our 4 old buildings and a number of other little sheds we've added. But the buildings themselves, 3 of them are all over 100 years old. 2 of them were homes. They are in pretty dire need of being replaced. The 4th building is the building we're actually talking about in this project. It's our baby building. It was built in the 1960s. This is sort of a picture of it. It's a concrete block garage, and it's 1,440 square feet. That's the picture of the rooftop unit is on that building. And actually that unit was added in 2014, so it's actually pretty new, but it is nonetheless failing for us, unfortunately, at the present time. We did, at the time we did the retrofit of this building, which took us about 4 years to finish. We've been very careful about adding insulation and trying to reinforce our roof the best we can and restuccoing so we would have a little bit more insulation around the walls. So all of those things are in place. We have an electric hot water heater in this building. We don't have a real kitchen because I don't know, there was some permitting issue around that. So anyway, we don't have that, but we do serve food there. Just please don't turn me in. We have a swamp cooler. We decided to do the swamp cooler when we did this because we felt it would be a better ecological choice for us to do. And and I think it probably is if you just don't need to talk or use anything in the building, it would really work great. So we can't really have our programming going on while it's running because no one can hear each other, or maybe the stuff we're working on is blowing around. So that's been an issue for us. So we've been really fortunate to be able to be one of the pilot projects, learning what's going to happen just a few minutes ago. That's kind of what we're doing there. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. I do have some of my products with me and some flyers about my sale. I'm right over in the corner. So please stop by and I'll answer any other questions for you.
All right, thanks. Well, Tough Act to Fall, those are some really great organizations that we just heard about. I know we've worked with some of them, like the Sun Valley. So yes, buy some things, stock up for Christmas. I know I've already got some ideas. So we're going to follow on this electrification concept, shifting gears a little bit to a little bit more of the technical side. So we're definitely a little bit more in the Dork arena, but it's all still kind of important information as you plan for electrification, do these feasibility reports, and understand if electrification is really going to work for your building. So just a real quick information on who I am and who I'm with. I'm the president of Group 14 Engineering, and we are a consulting firm focused on these different areas around energy, sustainability, commissioning, really heavy focus in all of these areas to provide buildings that are both operationally comfortable. So we try to make sure people are not cold and wind blowing. So we have that priority, but also really keep the environment in mind. We really have a strong focus on this electrification, decarbonization, as that's really become in the forefront and climate change has become so pressing. So my piece here today is to talk about this guide that we worked on with Denver. Group 14 has worked with Denver throughout a very long journey from very early task force on the 80 by 50 through the Energize Denver task force. Also been doing some technical consulting along the way. So this particular guide is a focus on kind of the technical side of electrification, what system types there are in buildings, how we electrify those systems with a preference there on the cost effective. We'll talk a little bit in the guide in more detail. I'll just kind of touch on the contents. There are currently systems that are not as feasible, not as cost effective. Those come in the later years of those code changes. So kind of we've heard a little bit of this as Jeff started on this really awesome trajectory down here on the right. We're very fortunate. A lot of our projects that are looking at decarbonization where Xcel Energy is doing a lot of this for us on the electricity side. So that trajectory is going down to 80% reduction by 2030 and with goals to have a completely emission-free electricity supply by 2050. So this really pushes us towards looking at electric energy for all of our needs, cars, heating, water heating, as much as we can get on and take advantage of what the utility is supplying and what we can also supply. We can't drill our own natural gas by our building, but we can put up solar panels. We can subscribe in community solar to get to this truly carbon-free building operation. One of the other drivers here is that heat pump technology has come a long way. I'll touch on a couple things where we still need improvements, but it's getting there so we can do this cost-effective operation as well. Electric resistance heat's been around for a long time. There's buildings in Denver already, but they're pretty expensive to operate. So looking at that heat pump technology. Also looking at that partial electrification. We heard that some of the buildings that are in the pilot are going to look at keeping some of that natural gas, and that can be a key component to reduce the first cost and those peak monthly costs that we heard about also at the church. Oh. Here, Zach. All right. So this is where we're talking about that partial electrification. See if it comes back. And we're just keep going. Do we have any thoughts on? Okay. The easy to electrify or medium to electrify systems are going to be our kind of early categories on what we're going to focus on. Some of those timing of when we're looking at electrification is really, we intentionally put a picture up here of a building that's very gutted. That's going to be your easiest time to electrify is when you're already replacing the piping. You're already getting stuff down to basically the structure of the building. That's going to be your easiest time. There are other times where you're at least adding cooling or replacing your boilers. So there's going to be some very key points in time when electrification is going to make the most sense. The code is requiring electrification at the time of replacement when you go to put in your building department. The city at this point is not going to go to any building and say, you have a gas, whatever, rip it out. That's not in the current plan. What's in the plan is to say, when you go to replace it, you're going to have specific requirements. So we have the guide divided into a few different sections. One, the easy to electrify aligns with what's going to be required in 2025. This is also what's going into these electrification feasibility reports. I like EFR. That's a lot easier to say. So I'm going to go with that too. So these are this is the equipment types. The reason why we're calling them easy, I prefer to call them easier because there's still some changes that are required, but they're easy because they're available today. There's equipment that is very similar. It looks pretty similar. It can often go right where the old equipment went. You might have to do some modifications to the roof curb, but pretty much the rooftop unit replaces the old rooftop unit, or the furnace replaces the old furnace. So limited modifications available today, good prices, some even at exact same prices as you could get for a cooling only unit. You could get a heat pump version for a very similar price. The tank water heater is another one where there's a little bit more effort, because tank water heaters typically have no electric supply now. So that does require some electric supply, but it is the same physical size for the most part. It can connect to your pipes in the same way. And in the guide, it gives more information on each system type, some considerations, some challenges when it might not work, things like refrigerant line lengths, things like that that come into play. Won't get into that today, but keep an eye out. The QR code and the link are there. The medium to electrify, this is kind of a subset of these are not going to be recorded in 2025 because this equipment is more intrusive. There's more replacement. And what we categorize this as it's available today in heat pump version. It just requires more invasive replacement. So you're going into every zone and replacing PTACs or VTACs. Unit ventilators are often found in classrooms. There are heat pump options available for these today. You can get a split air handler. It's just a lot more challenging in some of these. It requires running things throughout your building, refrigerant lines that you may not have today. So it is more expensive and really makes a lot more sense when you're in that building is gutted scenario. But we have this in the medium because you can get heat pumps. That's really the big focus. You'll keep hearing heat pumps, like we love heat pumps because they have that 30% of that energy cost of an electric resistance. So this is really where it becomes aligned with our operating cost needs. Just an example, and I think the examples that we saw here, I'll go through this quickly because we kind of already heard about this rooftop unit. You can replace these rooftop units with a very similar unit that instead of cooling only, it has a heat pump that can both heat and cool. It looks the same. It often has a very similar profile. Any new unit will be slightly different. Even a new rooftop unit with cooling only will be slightly different. So there'll be some modifications. We'll have to work with an electrical contractor for the connections and a mechanical contractor for the air side. But these are some of the detail that gets into the guide of what we'll have to consider. So there's that backup heating. We heard today that those rooftop units at the church might still have electric backup. There might be some that keep the gas backup. So those are types of considerations. There's also different nuances to what's happening below that rooftop unit. It might be a single zone, and then that's it. That's all the heating. It might be a multi-zone unit, and then you have some different considerations for what happens to the downstream equipment. On the ones that we're working on now that have multi-zone units, you can leave everything downstream the same, and that's more of that partial electrification scenario. However, the downstream units, if it's electric resistance heat, if it's hydronic heat, that can remain and can be a phased project. And our last category here, which we're calling the hard to electrify, this is currently in that 2027, but with the caveat that it's cost effective and has system options available. These are really our more challenging equipment options right now because there really aren't heat pumps available. These are your boilers, steam systems. We heard this building is steam, which means it's very high temperature, either steam distributed or high temperature hot water. We're talking 180-degree water circulating throughout the building. There is not currently heat pump technology at a large scale. It is in research. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's just that you can't today go buy a boiler replacement as a heat pump that could serve a 200,000 square foot building and produce 180-degree water. It is in research. It's a priority. We do expect them to become available. So that's really what Denver and what we're all in this space hoping is that by 2027, you can just pop out that old boiler, pop in a heat pump, and be on your way. That's just not currently available today. You can get electric resistance equipment. So if you're just saying, I want to do it today, I have to replace the boiler, I don't want to do any more natural gas, you can do an electric resistance boiler. It's just going to really hit you on the operating cost side and that big electrical supply. So we do have people considering that today to replace their steam, to replace their boilers. It is possible. But we are also encouraging some people just wait a little bit longer. If you can wait a few years, I mean, even in the last few months, I've heard of new equipment using CO2 refrigerants that can get higher lift. Like, it's happening. So if you are in I don't really have to do anything yet, you might want to wait a bit before you invest in a new boiler that can last 20 plus years. So yeah, and this one, you can also do those downstream devices. So you could just kind of switch to having distributed heat pumps downstream, having VRF. We do have many buildings that just say, no, I can't deal with 200 heat pumps in my building. I need my one heating device. So that might not be an option for everyone, but it could be a consideration if you are doing that big remodel anyways. And that wraps up. So it was really just a highlight of the guide. Tried not to be too technical on it, but we do have information in there. And through all of these great programs and pilots and examples, you can get support to see how this would work well for your building. Thank you.
Thank you. And great presentations. And just to kind of recap as we do the Q&A for 15 minutes, hopefully you still have 15. I think one of the big things is codes are changing. This is the time to start planning and researching your building needs. There are available products now. There are people doing retrofits right now and working on these pilots. Figure out what is best for your building. And I'll plug our resources with our folks, our partners at Community Planning and Development are standing up their website to show what are the codes, what are the requirements coming. We're setting up our pilots and our trainings coming soon. So sign up for those and work with your HVAC professionals, work with your teams to start figuring out how and what do you want to do in your buildings, because there are a lot of options out there. And with that, I'll take your questions.
I had a question on group buy. Does Denver or another organization coordinating group buy efforts for systems? Because, you know, HVAC has gotten pretty expensive over the last couple of years. Just wondering if that's an option.
That is a great option for us. We have not explored the group buy yet, but as one of the things as we get towards that incentive design and towards the reviewing what are the barriers to actually getting product from the marketplace into Denver and into building owners, making sure that we have, places that it can be stored, group buy possibilities, all of those things should be on our plate to help move things into the marketplace. But we have not built those yet. And we always have to look at what is the barrier and how do we overcome that barrier? And group buy could be one of those. A lot of those things could come into play. Great question. Question over here. I'll move across.
What is being done to ensure that the local utility companies like Xcel has the capacity to support this transition?
Yeah, great question. So what is being done, at the local level you're talking about local power supply. And so I'll say one of the things we've looked at is really that, difference between, is it feasible to electrify a building? And we've looked at if you're currently have an AC unit on a property, you're peaking for electrical uses usually in the summertime. If we're shifting a building off of that to heat pumps, we should lower that demand throughout the summer, but we should also have capacity for that building in the wintertime. Now, there are locations, and we have several examples around that there is no AC on site. So we have to work with our local utility to say, what are the upgrades for that, that building for electrical needs? What are the capacity needs for that community around? And I think that's something that we need to work with Xcel on over the next, as this transition happens. And we know that it's not just a transition of code changes for buildings, it's a transition for our whole grid. So we need to keep working with Xcel on those.
These energy retrofits and changes are quite expensive. Have you considered partnering with Xcel to put together an on-bill financing program for energy retrofits and for the cost increases to upgrade equipment to electrical. On-bill financing through the utility has been extremely popular throughout the nation. It's just not done here.
Great point. And we have actually staff members at CAS are working with Xcel Energy through the PUC requirements. And I think that's something we can certainly bring back to all of them and talk more about on-bill financing or all of our financing options, because we know that we need to layer financing with incentives, with CPACE, with all of the options that are out there. And we look to partner with Xcel more on all of these programs together. So good point.
Oh, hi there. I have a question about the electrification feasibility report. And I'm just like wondering if the report is free or for a fee, and who are is it just for organizations in Denver that can use it, or can be used beyond Denver in Colorado? Why?
Great question. Let me try to answer that and tell me if I haven't, okay? So the feasibility report itself, the template is on Denver's website. So if you want that, you go grab it and you go run around wherever you want and you use it. Go for it. So that's free. But if we're talking about getting a feasibility report done, that is not free per se. That has a cost, right? A contractor, an engineer, someone has to do that, right? But we have the pilot program, which will pay for it in full. So then it becomes free to you because the city is paying for it. And then later we will have the program where we would determine, I don't know, maybe it's, up to $1,000 or up to 50% of it. That's what we're trying to figure out with the pilots, right? How much do we need to cover? How much do these things cost? So eventually in March, there will be a program where getting one, there is an incentive, because we realize this is a shift in the market. You have not had to do this before. This is an added cost at permitting, and we want to help shift the market. Did I answer all of the possible interpretations of the question?
Yes, you did.
Great.
Hey there. One of your outs is cost effective, right? I'm wondering what if you defined cost effective, and I hope you have, because it could get really gray and really muddy.
Yes. Yeah.
Great question. That has been defined. It was a little technical and dorky, so I didn't want to get too dorky on you, but now I'm going to dork out. So what the cost effectiveness is defined, we look at the net present value of the first cost of the equipment. So we're comparing the gas option and the heat pump option. Yes. Remember my chart that I had to be like, wait, which, okay. So we're looking at the net present value of the first cost, the operating cost. So we're forecasting what it would cost to operate both of them, and the societal cost of carbon, adding all of those together over the lifetime of the equipment. Okay. That net present value, if the heat pump option is within 15% of the gas option, we're calling that cost parity, and we're calling that cost effective. Yes? Okay. Awesome.
So apparently what you want to do here is reduce carbon emissions. Yes? Right now, the world concentration of carbon dioxide is 0.043% of the atmosphere. So by implementing these programs, by how much will that percentage be reduced?
I don't have a direct number on that percentage reduction. And I will say that there are a couple of goals from the program. It is climate action. We're trying to have reduction in greenhouse gases. We're also trying to prepare building owners and especially the lowest income at-risk neighborhoods, those under-resourced buildings, for a future where natural gas is going to get more expensive and more volatile in its cost, and electricity actually becomes the more norm. So we actually want to shift to more electric use for those customers also. I will say that what we do in Denver is not, if we do it alone, we will not have an overall effect, but many other cities and other states are looking at what we're doing and they're adopting this. So leadership goes a long way towards shifting a larger market and a larger shift in what's going to happen in the world.
John Kerry himself said, the entire United States would be zero CO2 emissions, it will not change worldwide concentration.
Okay, I will agree to disagree, but I will also talk with you more afterwards.
And we got another question in the back.
Great, thank you.
You had said that part of the estimating of cost is pegged to the societal cost of CO2. I'm curious what you're using as the metric for that societal cost of CO2. Is that pegged to the governments, which changes per administration, or?
Now I'm going to stumble on this because I didn't write it down today. It is actually within our code. It's actually codified within there, and it does increase over time. So the societal cost does go up, but it is pegged, I think, to the 2019 societal cost of carbon. And we'll look over at Katrina and see if she remembers the exact date. It's from a state number from, but it does go, I think, up by 1.5% every year. So yeah, the societal cost goes up over time, and we do factor that in. So the nice part, if you're thinking about this, what we're hoping to see is electrification products come more on the market, costs either go down or level off, and societal cost of carbon goes up over time. So as those lines cross, we start to see less and less likely where there is a need to actually say, yes, you can go with gas options. You are going to be required to do the gas system.
And thank you for that. Is on the point of bringing new technologies to the market. For my building, which is a fan coil based building, we look to have hopefully much better comfort by moving to water source heat pumps. One thing we've found is that the Excel rebates for heat pumps today specifically talk about mini splits, air source heat pumps, and ground source heat pumps, but nothing for those of us who might have hydronic piping that could do water source heat pumps and do energy efficiency between the hot and cold side of a building. Is there any movement afoot to try to be able to recognize water source heat pumps as a legitimate technology for rebates?
I'm going to hand it over to Celeste to talk about that technology. I think we always look at, is the product available and is it cost effective? Is there enough in the marketplace to actually have an incentive for it?
And unfortunately, I don't have a specific answer of whether rebates will be available for water source heat pumps. I know Excel has been making changes. It first started with they only gave rebates for only residential, only split air source heat pumps. That's changed to commercial. So they are expanding their programs. They are getting a lot of push from different organizations like EEBC, the Energy Efficiency Business Council, to expand those rebates to more heat pumps. So I do expect it to change. Unfortunately, I can't tell you when or how much, but it is on people's radar.
Hi there. This is kind of a two-part question, but I can't remember what the threshold was for 2024's rooftop dual fuel tonnage. Good, I'm not the only one.
Okay, I guess I'm not understanding the question.
Well, at what tonnage, when you replace it in 2024, it has to be a dual fuel unit, correct? No?
In 2025, rooftop units shift.
2025.
Yeah, and so part of the feasibility process is if equipment exists today to replace it cost effectively with a heat pump. 20 tons is where it's very available, up to 20 tons right now. As you get into larger sizes, there are some bigger custom units. But if you have a building that has larger capacity, or that has a larger unit, and you go, it's 2025, the city tells you you have to do a heat pump, and you say there is no heat pump available for my application, you will not be required to do so. It's another one of those areas that a lot of people are pushing for. We need larger units, and high temp water are two of the biggest limitations on heat pumps right now. It's changing fast. By 2025, those larger, it could be up to 100 tons by 2025.
But
there might be other engineers in the
Denver,
audience that know of more, but
Denver has a requirement by 2024 for Denver.
2025 or 2025 is when the first round of rooftop units are required.
Okay.
So in 2025, if you have a rooftop unit, you will be told it has to be electrified
in some way.
if
It
it's
can't-
cost effective. And if it can't be done with a heat pump, it will not be required or cost effective. It won't pass that cost effectiveness test. So you will not be required to do it. If it's 2025, you have a rooftop unit and you cannot replace it with a heat pump.
Because there is a refrigerant change coming and it's in 2025. So if you're going to make an investment in a piece of equipment for your building, that would be the time to do it because you're going to have the current, global warming, low global warming potential refrigerant
So
available.
hopefully everything just magically aligns and we have 100-ton heat pump with a new refrigerant exactly in time to meet the code. And incentives, and it's going to be super easy because it's in the easy to electrify category.
And I will clarify this. These are for existing buildings and existing systems. If you're building something new, then you may be looking at the 2024 code requirements for new buildings. And I don't know if anyone from our new buildings team wants to talk about if that is your issue. We can talk afterwards. And I see Lucy flagging me down. So she may be saying that I need to wrap it up.
So
All right.
one quick, Celeste, I think there was a bill passed this year that was incentives or tax incentives around heat pumps. And I think we got water included in that. I don't remember the bill number though. So that the state level, there was a bill passed around tax incentives around that kind of equipment. And I'm not expert on equipment and buildings, so that's about as much as I know, but maybe the city can figure out what that is and let people know what that looks like.
Yeah, we'll follow up and put that on our website. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, a big round of applause for our panel. Thank you, guys.